10 dark facts about the Mongols and their invasion of the Islamic world and the Middle East during the Middle Ages. Fact number 1. The Mongols killed really large amounts of people when they invaded Central Asia and the Middle East. And I mean really large amounts of people. Like, they are assumed to have killed about 70 to 90% of the population that lived in what is modern day Iran, in the worst case estimations. Iran's population didn't recover until the early 20th century, nearly 800 years later by some estimates. Fact number 2. The Mongols de-urbanized Central Asia, more specifically the region of Transoxiana, and more or less killed local High Persian culture. The Mongols razed and destroyed so many of the great Persian cities of Central Asia, some of which had populations in the hundreds of thousands, that Persian-speaking populations were more or less extinct in the area, and their settled cultures were replaced by nomadic groups. And with the exception of Samarkand, during the reign of Timur Lenk, no of the former great cities that dotted Central Asia would ever return to their former greatness as economic centers and centers of culture. And it should be known that it was these lands that gave birth to many of the greatest Islamic thinkers of the Golden Age, such as the Islamic theologian al-Maturidi, the founder of the Maturidi school of Islamic theology, one of the greatest schools of Islamic theology within Islam, and the famous mathematician al-Khwarizmi, who is credited with the principles behind algebra, and many of the greatest of Persian poets, such as Ferdowsi. From this point onward in history, this area would arguably never reach the heights it had before in terms of urbanization, economic richness, and cultural development, being a center of culture and thinking in the context of the greater intellectual world of the Islamic Golden Age. Dark fact number 3. The Mongols utterly annihilated the city of Baghdad, arguably the greatest city in the Middle East at that time, and the surrounding areas, killing hundreds of thousands of people, making the rivers of Iraq run red and black with blood and ink, coming from the slaughtered victims and the destroyed books of the libraries of Baghdad. Baghdad went from being the seat of the Abbasid Caliphate that had dominated the Middle East for centuries, the seat of global science, culture and philosophy, to being a minor city. It would never reattain its former greatness after the Mongols. Dark fact number 4. The Mongols, being pastoral nomads, would intentionally destroy farmland and turn the farmland into pasture for their own cattle. This would make restarting farming and making the necessary agriculture that is needed in order to sustain a big enough food surplus in order to maintain urbanization hard for several generations afterwards, and is the reason as to why many of the lands that were conquered by the Mongols remained desolate for hundreds of years. Dark fact number 5. The Mongols largely succeeded in the Middle East due to the disunity that existed during this time period. When the Mongols attacked and sacked Baghdad, the Abbasids had long ago lost most of their power to various local rulers, and were but a mere shadow of their former selves. They had gone from controlling one of the largest empires on earth into not controlling much more than Baghdad and surrounding areas. And they were also in conflict with a lot of other political entities in the Middle East. And for dark fact number 6. Once the Mongols faced an entity that was coherently united and strong in the Middle East, they got defeated. For example, they suffered defeat at Ain Jalut and in the Battle of Elbistan, both at the hands of the Mamluks. The Mongols succeeded as long as they could prey upon weaker entities in the Middle East. But once they faced an entity that wasn't weak, they faced defeat Yet, as for dark fact number 7, the Mongols remained as a power in the Middle East, in the form of the Ilkhanid Mongols, who lasted for almost 100 years and converted to Islam, more or less assimilating into the local Persian and Arabic culture that existed there before their arrival. Dark fact number 8. Actually, most of the Middle East and North Africa was actually rather unaffected by the Mongol invasions. The center of knowledge and economic activity had in the previous centuries moved further south and west in the Middle East, into Egypt, Yemen and in the far west of the Al-Maghrib region, even before the Mongols, making the effect of the Mongols on the Islamic world as a total, not a complete devastation of the entire Islamic world. And the devastation was actually limited just to certain regions that were totally devastated, but did not crash the Islamic civilization as a whole or set it on a path towards some sort of inevitable decay, as has often been claimed by many. Rather, other factors that came much later or were already present were the cause of that. I will probably make a video about this in more detail in the future, so stay tuned for that one. But a good argument as to why the Mongols were not that devastating in a total long-term perspective comes now in fact number 9. The Mongols were not the first large-scale nomadic invasions of the Middle East. Even before the appearance of Islam, you had several Indo-Iranic peoples migrating down into the Middle East, creating various Persian dynasties. You also had the White Huns, and after Islam, before the Mongols, you had several Turkic invasions such as the Ughuz Turks that would create the Seljuk Empire. And these were also very devastating. But they didn't mean the end of the Middle East as a center of civilization. Also, as for dark fact number 10, the end of the Ilkhanid Mongols was not the end of nomadic invasions into the Middle East, as under Timur-Lane, the nomadic invaders would come back for round 2 a century later and repeat the massive slaughter and devastation once more, arguably to an even worse degree than the original Mongols ever managed to do. And it is argued in some ways that Timur-Lane is responsible, more in fact than the Mongols, for a lot of the devastation from the Mongols lasting to the modern day, because he redid it and did it even worse during a time when the Middle East was just recovering from the previous Mongol invasion. And depending upon various arguments, the Mongols were not the worst nomadic invasion that happened upon the Middle East. These are 10 dark facts about the Mongol invasions of the Islamic world and the Middle East. I hope you enjoyed it.
Please do subscribe, as it would help the channel spread awareness about the humanities.
اشتركوا بالقناة من فضلكم.